Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. I have come to find, as I progress through this life, that most men will never go MGTOW. I think a lot of men don't know that MGTOW is even an option. And of the ones that do know that MGTOW is an option, they're not interested in it. They still hold to the fallacy, the lie, that somehow it's not going to happen to them, that somehow they are going to be the exception to the rule. And as time progresses, I find myself thinking less and less about women and less about relationships. You know, there was a time when those things occupied my mind for the better part of the day. And particularly that had, that coincided with, my age at that time, how old I was. And as I've gotten older, those things have become less and less of a priority, be it due to nature or be it due to just seeing the reality of relationships and female behavior. A lot of my issue in terms of, why I'm not interested in relationships, a lot of the reason why that is because what I'm attracted to simply doesn't exist. And so I cannot be attracted to whatever the watered down equivalent is. What I wanted in a relationship, what I was looking for in, girlfriend, wife, or whatever, as I have traversed throughout, the years, it's become quite obvious to me that was something that I had built up in my mind, and it was an idea that society had sold to me, but it was an idea that really just did not exist. It was an idea that couldn't exist. It's an idea that's against reality. It's an idea that's against natural law. It's against female nature at large. So that was kind of the big awakening for me. The demure, passive, supportive, caring, nurturing, loyal woman, the ideal that I had built up in my mind and the ideal that society helped to foster. It comes to find out that women are hypergamous, women are monkey branchers, that they will not settle for somebody that they see as equal to or less status than them, that they will nurture and care only insofar as it gets them ahead. What I guess I'm trying to say is that the facade and the fantasy fell apart for me, and what was left was the reality of the selfish human being. So when it becomes quite obvious to somebody that, there's no point in longing for, there's no point in trying to continue to look for something that's not going to be there. I mean, it's like when you lose your keys or you lose your wallet, you keep going back to this one place 4, 5, 6 times, thinking, hoping, praying that somehow the item is going to be there, and it never is. And that's what it's like to me in my mind to continue to pursue relationships and to continue to think that maybe, Nawalt and not AWOL, but yet all the evidence points to the AWOL. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. But when I grew up, I realized that the possibilities of that happen were impossible. Ninja Turtles didn't even exist. So then how could I therefore become one? And so life goes on. You move on to the next thing. You move on and progress and adapt, and you overcome. And you find out really what life is all about. And then you find out what it is that you want out of life. Because the grass is not always greener. Sometimes the grass is greener, but we're not really talking about the grass, are we? What we're wondering is how much happier are you really going to be on that side of the fence? And that was another truth that MGTOW brought to me and opened my eyes up to. Because the fact of the matter is, one cannot ignore all the statistics. One cannot ignore what's in the media. One cannot ignore what they see happening around them. And the reality of it is how many marriages, I mean, personally, that you know of that last. I mean, setting aside all the marriages, when you were a kid going to school, how many divorced kids did you grow up with? Now, I don't know if it was because it wasn't something that I paid particular attention to at that time, or if the numbers really were that low, but I remember growing up with very few kids that were divorced. But what I'm really more interested in is contemporarily, how many of your friends, relatives, people that are of the same age and background as you, people that would be pretty close within your time frame, how many of those people are in happy, successful, and supportive marriages? How many of those people are even still married? And I would be hard pressed to say that I meet more people my age and younger who have had at least one or two divorces. And that's the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is you marry, you stay married for a couple years, you have a few kids, and then when it inevitably comes crashing down, half or more is taken from you, your children are taken from you, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're wondering how you're going to make these child support and alimony payments, all these things. And even still, it could be worse than that. I mean, it can be so bad, as it has been for some, that it has driven fathers to, commit immolation, like some of the monks in Vietnam, in protest of the family court and in protest of the practices of the family court. I'd say that's pretty bad. I'd say that, I would wager to guess that many of us, when we look at marriage objectively, when we look at it from a purely financial standpoint, I'm hard pressed, and I've had this conversation with people before, to find any kind of silver lining when it comes to being married. When it comes to the fact that you're essentially handing somebody a loaded gun and they're holding it up against your head, and at any moment they could pull the trigger for any reason and would be totally justified. And I've asked people, if you really look at it, hard numbers, hard figures, what is the benefit for men in getting married? I see why it's beneficial to women. It's a veritable lottery ticket for them. But for men, why is it a beneficial thing? And all of the people that I've talked to never are able to come up with a valid reason. The reasons, of course, that they come up with are based in tradition. They're based in some kind of high and lofty ideal that only a male mind would come up with. The idea that this is what you do. This is what a man does. This is, some sort of rite of passage into manhood. This is what men do. And you take the risk. Because, of course, nobody ever thinks that the worst is ever going to happen to them. It's like a lot of people that smoke. People know the risks of smoking, but nobody ever thinks they're going to get lung cancer. So that's kind of the thing about whether the grass is really all that much greener. Because if that's the worst case scenario, the best case scenario is after a while, after a couple years of marriage, the flame kind of flounders. You end up in kind of a roommate type situation. Maybe there's some sex involved, but maybe there isn't. And you end up spending all your time, energy, and effort trying to keep the woman happy, trying to avert that disaster, trying to avert divorce, spending more and more money, running more and more circles, jumping through more and more hoops. And for what? Some mediocre sex and some mediocre at best companionship. Nothing really all that deep. Nothing really worth the stress the anxiety, the one-upsmanship, constantly spending your life trying to keep this person entertained, trying to keep this person happy so that they don't pull the pin on things and it doesn't all go swirling down the drain. That's really the best case scenario. You must have a plan, guys. I think that that's one of the biggest downfalls of a lot of people. They have these goals, they have these dreams, they have these aspirations, they have the life that they want to live. It's in their head. They know what they want it to be. It's like a blueprint. But they have no plan of getting there. They've got no plan of what it is that they eventually want to end at. They've got an idea of what the end is. They know what the end looks like, but they have no idea of how to get there. I've been kind of contemplating some career moves. I got a promotion about 2 months back, and it's been nice, but I have a goal in my mind. I have a goal, a dream that I've set for myself in my industry of where I'd like to go and where I'd like to end at. But I keep kind of holding myself back with that still small voice of, well, I'm comfortable with where I'm at, even though I'm not 100% happy with where I'm at. You know, I've got a paycheck, I've got a job, I've got a pretty good position within the organization. But ultimately, there's a nagging at me that says, you know, 10 or 15 years down the road, are you going to look back and think, man, I really wished I would have went for this. I really wish that I hadn't have sold myself short and just stayed where I was comfortable at and stayed, you know, with what I knew because of the fear of striking out on something new and different. And I find that my friends and some of the closest people around me, it's interesting. And I think this is a phenomenon that I think many MGTOW, I'm sure, have experienced. Because we've experienced it when it comes to talking to things about marriage and relationships and that sort of thing. There's always the opposing voice telling us we're wrong and telling us that we haven't figured things correctly and we need to redo the math. Well, this is what I'm finding. I'm finding now that people are saying you need to settle down. And not necessarily settle down with a wife and have some kids, but you need to settle down in your career. Now's the time to settle down in your career. You're getting too old. You're not a spring chicken anymore. Why would you go and do that when you've got this good job? When you've got this job that, you know, is stable. And one of the guys that said this to me is older than me and recently left the organization a few months back for another place because he thought the grass was greener there. Now that's interesting to me, how so many people, so many friends are so quick to cast, you know, just doubt upon you and disparagement upon you. It's almost like misery loves companies, guys. It's almost like misery loves company, guys. Think about it. You have this nagging feeling, this want, this desire to go do this. And the people that should be most supportive, the people that should be most encouraging, are the very ones that are telling you settle down. Now, why is that? Why do they want you to do that? What does it benefit them one way or the other? Whether you do this, whether you do that. And I think it's just a simple, natural thing with most people. Most people really don't want you to go your own way. Be it in your job, your finances, your relationships, your personal life, spiritual beliefs, whatever the case may be. Most people don't want you to go your own way because deep down inside, they are terrified that you'll be successful. Go your own way or